You know that saying, a man's home is his castle? That's how I saw my life. Solid, unshakable, built on the foundation of hard work, loyalty, and trust. But here's the thing about castles. They're vulnerable to betrayal from within. My name's Robert, and this is the story of how I tore down the facade of my perfect life brick by brick. It started the day my business went under. I'd been in Chicago for 3 days, trying to sort out supplier issues for the logistics company I built from the ground up. Everything seemed normal until I got the call that the IRS had seized the company. Payroll taxes, unpaid for months. My accountant hadn't said a word. The shock hit me like a freight train, but I didn't crumble. That's not who I am. I don't cry in the corner. I act. By the time I'd gathered the details, it was clear I was facing a disaster. Exhausted and furious, I booked the earliest flight home. I didn't call Emma, my wife of 15 years. I figured I'd surprise her and maybe find some comfort in the one person who'd always been my rock. I walked into our house just after 5. Everything looked as it should. The lights were on, the living room was spotless, and Emma's signature vanilla candles were burning. The house felt warm and welcoming, but for the first time, something felt off like an itch in the back of my mind I couldn't scratch. Emma wasn't home. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and the kids weren't there either. I shrugged it off, figuring she'd taken them out for dinner or some errands. That was fine. I needed a few minutes to gather my thoughts anyway. I went to my office, dropped my bags, and sat at my desk to check emails. The low hum of the garage door opening made me glance up. Good, I thought. She's back. I expected to hear the kids chattering or Emma calling out a cheerful, "Honey, I'm home." Instead, I heard her voice, playful, almost flirtatious. "Stop that," she said, but there was no real protest in her tone. Then came a man's voice. "You don't really want me to stop, do you?" My heart didn't just sink. It roared to life with a surge of fury. I froze for a second, listening to make sure I wasn't imagining things. "Actually," the man continued, "let's not even wait for the bedroom. The couch looks good enough." It hit me like a punch to the gut. Every instinct screamed for me to storm out and end this immediately, but I forced myself to stay put. I had to be smart. "You're quite the enthusiast, Lucas," Emma said, her voice dripping with amusement. Lucas, her boss, a man I'd shaken hands with at countless company events. The charming, overly confident type I'd never liked but tolerated because I trusted her. In that moment, something primal kicked in. This wasn't going to be a quiet confrontation. This wasn't going to end with me sitting in the corner, licking my wounds. My blood boiled, and I grabbed my phone. If they were going to disrespect me in my own home, I'd make sure there was no way they could deny what I was about to expose. I switched my phone to camera mode, my hands steady despite the anger surging through me, and crept toward the living room. I wasn't some helpless fool. I was a man with a plan. When I rounded the corner, I didn't stay hidden. I didn't play games. I stepped right into the room, the sound of my shoes hitting the hardwood loud enough to make them turn. The looks on their faces were worth every ounce of restraint it took to wait. Emma's face drained of color. Lucas froze, his shirt half unbuttoned like a deer caught in headlights. "What the hell is this?" I barked, my voice steady, but sharp enough to cut through the tension like a knife. They scrambled to untangle themselves, tripping over the couch and each other. Lucas looked like he was about to say something, but I stepped toward him, and he bolted, nearly tripping over his own feet on his way out the door. I didn't chase him. He wasn't my focus. I turned my glare to Emma, who was still fumbling to button her blouse. "You better start explaining," I said, my voice low and deadly. "Robert, Save it," I snapped. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me the truth before I call Laura and let her know what her husband's been up to." Her eyes widened. "Don't. Please. It's not what it looks like." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, it's not? Because it looks like my wife, the mother of my children, was about to screw her boss on my couch. So enlighten me, Emma. What is it then?" She stammered, her face crumbling as I stood there, unmoving. For the first time in years, I saw her for who she really was, and it made my stomach turn. I didn't need Emma to explain anything. I had all the proof I needed. But I wasn't going to waste this moment. My mind raced with possibilities. What would hit her hardest? What would ensure she couldn't weasel her way out of this? But first, I had to make sure I had evidence she couldn't deny. While Lucas made a run for it, I raised my phone and snapped 3 more photos of his pathetic escape. Emma, buttoning her blouse with trembling hands, turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Fear, guilt, and, unbelievably, a touch of defiance. "Explain," I said flatly, holding up my phone to make it clear I'd seen and heard everything. "Robert," she stammered, "it's not what it looks like." That sentence snapped something inside me. "Don't insult me, Emma," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "If you're going to destroy our marriage, at least have the guts to admit it." She opened her mouth to say something, but I wasn't done. "You bring him into my house. You touch him on my couch. And you think you can spin this into some misunderstanding." Her mouth closed, her lips pressing into a thin line. She wasn't going to confess. Not yet. So, I decided to dig a little deeper. "How long?" "What?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. "How many times have you lied to me, smiled in my face, and pretended we were a happy family?" She didn't answer. That silence was louder than any excuse she could have given me. "You stepped closer, telling over here. You want to stay quiet? Fine. Let me paint the picture for you. I'll call Laura right now, show her these pictures, and let her know exactly what kind of man her husband is." That broke her. She lunged forward and grabbed my arm. "No, please, Robert. Don't do that. Laura doesn't deserve this. And I do." I spat, yanking my arm away. "What about Mark and Chloe? Do they deserve a mother who's screwing around behind their father's back?" Emma flinched at their names, her resolve crumbling. "It's complicated," she said weakly. "Oh, I bet it is," I sneered. "So, start uncomplicating it. Tell me everything." She sank onto the couch, the same couch where I just caught her with Lucas, and buried her face in her hands. For a moment, I thought she wasn't going to say anything. Then she started to talk. "It started years ago," she said, her voice muffled. "That Christmas party you missed because of your business trip to Seattle." I narrowed my eyes, the memory clicking into place. That was when I'd first noticed her pulling away from me, but I'd chalked it up to holiday stress. "Go on," I said, my tone cold. "We were drunk," she continued, her words spilling out in a rush. "It was just a kiss under the mistletoe. I didn't mean for it to go any further. But what?" I snapped. "You couldn't help yourself?" Her head jerked up, her eyes flashing. "You don't understand, Robert. You were always gone, always putting the business first. I needed. Don't you dare try to make this my fault." I interrupted, my voice rising. "I was out there building a life for us, for our kids, while you were what? Getting cozy with Lucas because you were bored." "It wasn't like that," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "I love you, Robert. I never stopped loving you." I laughed bitterly. Funny way of showing it. Emma wiped her face with trembling hands. "It was a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake. After that party, I told Lucas it couldn't happen again. And it didn't for a while. For a while," I repeated. "How long?" She hesitated, her silence confirming what I already knew. "It started again after Laura got pregnant," she admitted finally. "Lucas said she wasn't available anymore and you thought it was your job to pick up the slack." I cut in, disgusted. Her face crumpled, and she looked away. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. I paced the room, my fists clenching and unclenching as I tried to process everything. Every memory of our life together, every moment I'd trusted her, now felt like a lie. "Does he know about the kids?" I asked suddenly. "What?" she said, looking up at me in confusion. "Lucas. Does he think they're his?" Her mouth opened, then closed. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I turned toward the stairs, my resolve hardening. "Where are you going?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "To get my things," I said flatly. "If you want Lucas so badly, you can have him. But you'll regret thinking I'd let you walk away from this unscathed." She jumped up, following me. "Robert, wait. We can fix this. Please, let's talk about it. For the kids." I stopped abruptly, and she almost ran into me. "Don't," I said, my voice low and steady. "Don't you dare use our kids as an excuse. This isn't about them. This is about you. And you're going to pay for what you've done. I didn't just walk upstairs to grab my things. I stormed, each step landing like the crack of a gavel in a courtroom. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is fleeting. What I felt now was colder, sharper, a rage tempered by betrayal. Emma trailed behind me, pleading with a desperation I'd never heard before, but it didn't matter. She'd spent years building this web of lies. Now, she could choke on it. As I flung the bedroom door open, I didn't care about being careful. Drawers slammed, hangers clattered, and Emma stood frozen in the doorway, unsure whether to come closer or stay back. "Robert, please," she said, her voice breaking. "It doesn't have to end like this. Let me explain." I threw a handful of ties into my suitcase without even looking at her. "Explain?" I said, my tone steady but venomous. "Explain what, Emma? How you've been screwing around behind my back for years? Or how you managed to smile in my face every morning while you did it?" "It's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't insult me," I snapped, turning to face her. "I walked in on you, Emma. I saw it. I heard it. There's nothing left to explain. The only thing I want to know is how long." Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for the right words, but all that came out was, "It wasn't like that. It was complicated." I laughed bitterly. "Complicated? Sure, let's call it that. You and Lucas, tangled up like teenagers in MY living room, on MY couch in MY house. What's complicated about that, Emma? Break it down for me." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I didn't care. She wasn't going to wriggle out of this with tears and half-baked excuses. "It was a mistake," she whispered finally, her voice trembling. "A mistake," I repeated, stepping closer. "A mistake is spilling coffee on the rug. What you did wasn't a mistake, Emma. It was deliberate. You made a choice, again and again. So don't stand there and insult my intelligence by calling it a mistake." She flinched as if I'd slapped her, and for a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of my breathing. Then, she sat down on the edge of the bed, burying her face in her hands. "I never wanted it to go this far," she said, her voice muffled. I barked a laugh. "And how far is too far, Emma? Is it too far when your husband walks in on you? Or were you planning to bring him into our bed next?" She looked up sharply, her cheeks stained with tears. "You weren't supposed to find out," she blurted, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. "Wow," I said, shaking my head. "You really don't get it, do you?" I turned back to the closet, yanking my clothes off their hangers with more force than necessary. "Tell me something, Emma. Was this just about Lucas? Or are there others?" Her silence was deafening. I stopped what I was doing and turned to face her. "Answer me." She hesitated, her lips trembling. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's not an answer," I growled. "How?" "Minnie." Her head dropped, and for a moment, I thought she might refuse to answer. But then she whispered 5. "Before Lucas. Back in college." I stared at her, my mind reeling. 5, I repeated, incredulous. "And I'm just supposed to believe that you stopped after Lucas? That there aren't more?" "There aren't," she said quickly, standing up now. "It was a phase, Robert. A stupid, immature phase. It doesn't mean anything." "A phase?" I said, my voice rising. "You call betraying me a phase? Like it's a bad haircut or some rebellious streak you grew out of?" "It's not like that," she said, her voice desperate now. "Oh, it's not?" I snapped. "Then tell me what it's like, Emma. Tell me what it's like to lie to the man who gave you everything. Tell me what it's like to look your kids in the eyes, knowing you're the reason their family's about to fall apart." Her face crumpled, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "I never stopped loving you," she said, her voice cracking. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare tell me you love me. Love doesn't do this, Emma. Love doesn't humiliate the person it's supposed to cherish." She reached out, but I stepped back. "The kids," I said abruptly. "Are they mine?" Her face went pale, and she shook her head furiously. "Of course they are." "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice deadly calm. "They're yours, Robert," she insisted, her voice rising. "I swear on my life, they're yours." I didn't believe her. "Not anymore. We'll see about that." I said, grabbing my suitcase and heading for the door. Where are you going? She called after me, panic creeping into her voice. To get some answers, I said flatly. And when I come back, you'd better have the decency to stay out of my way. She followed me to the stairs, tears streaming down her face. Robert, please, she begged. We can fix this. Don't throw everything away. I stopped at the bottom step and turned to face her. I'm not the one who threw it away, Emma. That was all you. And believe me, I'll make sure you regret it. Her expression crumbled as I walked out the door, but I didn't look back. There was no room for pity in this game. Not anymore. When I walked back through the door that evening, my head was clear and my resolve was unshakable. Emma wasn't going to weasel her way out of this, and I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. I had the evidence, the truth, and all the anger I needed to see this through. The house was quiet when I entered, eerily so. The lights were on, but there was no sign of the kids or Emma. For a second, I wondered if she'd taken them somewhere to avoid facing me. But then I heard her in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent as she spoke on the phone. I'm telling you, he's furious, she whispered. I don't know what he's going to do, but I need you to lay low for a while. If he finds you. She stopped mid-sentence as I walked into the room. Her face turned white, and she quickly ended the call, shoving her phone into her pocket. Talking to your boyfriend? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Robert, she started, her tone soft and pleading. Please, let's just sit down and talk. Oh, we're going to talk, I said, stepping closer. But you're going to do most of the talking, starting with the truth. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an escape. I've already told you everything, she said weakly. No, I said sharply, slamming my hand down on the kitchen table. You told me just enough to save face. Now I want the whole story, and I want it now. Emma flinched at my tone, but didn't argue. She sank into one of the chairs and buried her face in her hands. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said, her voice muffled. Lucas and I, it was just supposed to be harmless flirting. I laughed bitterly. Harmless? That's what you call screwing him on my couch. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. That was the first time we've done that here, she blurted, as if that somehow made it better. And where else, Emma? I demanded. How many hotel rooms, parking lots, or dark corners have you two desecrated behind my back? She hesitated, and that hesitation was answer enough. You're unbelievable, I said, shaking my head. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To this family? I made a mistake, she said, tears streaming down her face. I wasn't thinking straight, but it doesn't mean I don't love you, Robert. Ido. You still here? Incredulous. Love me? Do you even know what that word means? Because from where I'm standing, all you love is yourself and whatever thrill Lucas gives you. Her expression hardened at that, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of defiance in her eyes. You're not perfect, Robert, she snapped. You've been so consumed by work for years that you barely even noticed me. I felt invisible, like I was just a fixture in your life. Lucas made me feel seen. I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. Don't you dare put this on me, I growled. I worked my ass off to give you everything you ever wanted. A beautiful home, financial security, 2 amazing kids. And this is how you repay me. Her tears came faster now, but I wasn't moved. I've already contacted a lawyer, I said coldly. I'll be filing for divorce, and I'll make damn sure you walk away with nothing. Her head shot up, panic flashing in her eyes. You can't do that, she said quickly. The courts won't let you. We'll see about that, I said, crossing my arms. Her expression shifted, and suddenly the tears were gone. In their place was a look of cold calculation that sent a chill down my spine. If you try to ruin me, I'll fight back, she said evenly. I'll take the kids, the house, and everything you've worked for. You'll be left with nothing, Robert. Is that what you want? I smirked, shaking my head. You're forgetting one thing, Emma. I'm not the one who broke our vows. And I have proof. She faltered for a moment, but then her jaw tightened. You think Lucas will just roll over and let you destroy him? He'll fight too. And you know what? He's got the resources to do it. Oh, I know exactly what kind of man Lucas is, I said, leaning closer. And believe me, he's going to regret ever stepping foot in this house." Her bravado faltered, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Robert, please," she said softly. "This doesn't have to get ugly. Think about the kids. Do you really want to drag them through this?" That was a low blow, and she knew it. "I'm thinking about the kids," I said firmly, "and the example you're setting for them. If you think I'm going to let them grow up thinking this is normal, you're dead wrong." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't," I said, my voice low and deadly. "Don't try to manipulate me, Emma. It won't work." Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might give up. But then she looked at me, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice steady now. "If you go through with this, you'll regret it. I promise you that." I met her gaze, unflinching. "No, Emma," I said. "The only mistake I made was trusting you." With that, I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her sitting there in silence. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I hadn't slept much. How could I? Everything I thought I knew about my life was gone, shattered by Emma's lies. But lying in bed, wallowing in betrayal, wasn't going to fix anything. If I was going to get through this, I needed to act. By the time the sun rose, I was already at my desk, drafting an email to Michael, the attorney I'd trusted for years with legal matters for my business. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was a friend, someone I knew I could count on to help me fight this battle. The email was short and direct. "Michael, I need to discuss filing for divorce. There are significant complicating factors, including infidelity, potential paternity issues, and workplace violations involving Emma's affair partner. I'll call you at 10 to schedule a meeting." With that sent, I turned to my next priority, protecting myself financially. I logged into our joint bank accounts and began transferring as much money as I could into an account in my name only. I knew this would come up during the divorce proceedings, but I wasn't about to let Emma drain our savings while I sat idly by. Then came the credit cards. I canceled every joint card we had and made a mental note to pull my credit report to ensure there weren't any hidden accounts I didn't know about. It was tedious work, but it was necessary. As I sifted through the stack of financial documents in my home office, I came across the birth certificates for Mark and Chloe. My stomach churned as I stared at them, the doubt gnawing at me like a persistent itch. Were they even mine? I didn't want to believe it, but after everything Emma had admitted, how could I not question it? I grabbed my phone and called the lab downtown, where I'd once taken the kids for a routine checkup. After explaining the situation and paying extra for expedited results, I arranged for a DNA test kit to be delivered. By the time I finished with the financials, it was nearly 10 a.m., and I was on the phone with Michael. "This doesn't sound like your typical divorce, Robert," Michael said after I laid out the basics. "You got a lot going on here. Are you sure about the DNA tests?" "I'm sure," I replied. "If those kids aren't mine, it changes everything." "Fair enough," he said. "Now, about Lucas. If he's her direct supervisor, their relationship could violate workplace policies. We might be able to pursue legal action against him or the company." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "I want him to pay for this." Michael hesitated. "I need to warn you, Robert. This could get messy. Emma might lose her job too. Are you prepared for that?" "She brought this on herself," I said coldly. "Let her deal with the consequences." Michael sighed. "All right, I'll start drafting the paperwork for the divorce and look into Lucas's company policies. We'll need to gather as much evidence as possible. Do you have proof of the affair?" "Oh, I've got proof," I said, thinking of the photos on my phone. "Plenty of it." "Good," Michael said. "Bring everything to our meeting tomorrow. And Robert, brace yourself. This isn't going to be easy." By the time I hung up with Michael, I felt a small sense of satisfaction. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was taking control. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more person who needed to know the truth: Laura. Lucas's wife deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. And if this gave me an ally in my fight against him, all the better. I called Laura's office under the pretense of discussing a business opportunity. It was a lie, but it worked. By noon, we were sitting across from each other at a quiet cafe downtown. She looked surprised to see me, but not unpleasantly so. "Robert," she said, smiling, "this is unexpected." "Laura," I began, sliding the envelope of photos across the table. I'm sorry for what I'm about to show you, but you need to see this." Her smile faded as she opened the envelope. The color drained from her face as she flipped through the photos, her hands trembling. "Is this?" she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I said grimly. "Your husband and my wife." For a moment, she just stared at the pictures, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "That bastard," she muttered. "I thought you deserved to know," I said. "I also wanted to let you know that I'm taking legal action against both of them. You're welcome to join me if you want to." She looked up at me, her eyes blazing. "Oh, I want to," she said fiercely. "Believe me, I want to." We spent the next hour going over the details, exchanging contact information, and making plans to coordinate our efforts. As I left the cafe, I felt a surge of grim satisfaction. Lucas wasn't going to know what hit him. That evening, as I sat alone in my office, I reviewed everything I'd accomplished that day. I had the financials secured, the DNA tests in motion, the legal team engaged, and an ally in Laura. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As I stared out the window, the anger I'd felt earlier began to shift. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. Emma and Lucas had stolen enough from me. It was time to take it all back. The next morning, I sat in Michael's office, the envelope of damning photos spread across his desk. He sifted through them silently, his expression a mix of disbelief and grim determination. "Well," he said finally, setting the photos down, "this is more than enough to back up your claims. If nothing else, it'll give us leverage in the divorce." "That's not enough," I said coldly. "I want more than leverage. I want consequences for both of them." Michael leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "We can file for divorce on grounds of infidelity. Given the evidence, you could argue for a favorable settlement. But I'll be honest, Robert. In this state, infidelity doesn't always carry the weight you think it does. The courts will likely prioritize custody and financial arrangements over moral failings." "Then we make it carry weight," I said, my jaw tightening. "Lucas is her boss. Their affair violates workplace policies, doesn't it?" Michael nodded slowly. "It does. If his company has strict rules against supervisor-subordinate relationships, and most do, we could pursue action against them. That could cost Lucas his job, but it might also affect Emma." "She made her bed," I said without hesitation. "If she gets caught in the fallout, that's her problem." Michael's eyes narrowed as he studied me. "You're serious about this?" "Damn right I am," I replied. "I'm not just letting this slide, Michael. They need to pay for what they've done." He nodded again, reaching for a legal pad. "All right, let's start with the divorce filing. We'll include a clause requesting DNA verification for the children's paternity. If the results come back the way you think they might, it could drastically reduce your financial obligations." "And Lucas?" I asked. "I'll draft a letter to his company's HR department, outlining the policy violations and including the evidence you've provided. If they act on it, and they likely will, he could face termination." "Good," I said. "Do it." By the time I left Michael's office, the wheels were officially in motion. The legal process would take time, but I wasn't about to sit back and wait for things to unfold. I had other cards to play, and Lucas was at the top of my list. That afternoon, I parked my car a block away from Lucas's house and waited. It didn't take long for him to emerge, his smug grin intact as he climbed into his car and drove off. I followed him at a safe distance, my heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and fury. He parked at a downtown cafe, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind him. I watched as he strolled inside, his phone glued to his ear. It took every ounce of restraint I had not to confront him then and there, but I had a better plan. I walked in after him, taking a seat at a table near the back where I had a clear view of his every move. He ordered a coffee, settled into a corner booth, and pulled out his laptop. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man who thought he was untouchable. I waited until he was completely absorbed in whatever was on his screen before making my move. Walking up to his booth, I slammed the envelope of photos onto the table in front of him. Lucas jumped, his head snapping up to meet my gaze. His face went pale as he saw me, and even paler when he opened the envelope. "Robert," he began, his voice shaky. "Look, I can explain." "You don't get to explain," I said, leaning in close. You think you can come into my house, screw my wife, and walk away without consequences? Think again. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he fumbled to close the envelope. I didn't mean for this to happen. Save it, I snapped. This isn't a conversation. It's a warning. Your life is about to fall apart, Lucas. Your wife, your job, your reputation. I'm taking it all. And when I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never met Emma. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. I straightened up, glaring down at him. Enjoy your coffee, I said coldly before walking out. By the end of the week, the fallout had begun. Lucas's company wasted no time conducting an internal investigation after receiving Michael's letter. Within days, he was terminated for violating workplace policies, his reputation in shambles. Emma didn't fare much better. Though she wasn't fired immediately, the scrutiny on her was enough to make her position untenable. She called me one evening, her voice frantic. "What the hell have you done, Robert?" she demanded. "I did what you forced me to do," I replied calmly. "You and Lucas brought this on yourselves. You got him fired," she snapped. "And now they're coming after me. Do you have any idea what you've done to our family?" "Our family," I said, laughing bitterly. "You destroyed our family, Emma. I'm just cleaning up the mess." She launched into a tirade, but I hung up before she could finish. I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. The final blow came when the DNA results arrived. As I opened the envelope, my hands shook, not with fear, but with the weight of confirmation. The tests revealed that Mark and Chloe weren't mine. I sat there for a long time, staring at the results. I'd suspected it, but seeing it in black and white was like a knife to the gut. Still, it solidified my resolve. I wasn't going to let Emma or Lucas get away with this. Michael filed an addendum to the divorce papers, including the DNA results as evidence. The implications were clear. I wouldn't be paying child support for children that weren't mine. Lucas's wife, Laura, wasn't idle during all of this either. She filed for divorce almost immediately, citing infidelity and emotional abuse. Between her legal actions and mine, Lucas was drowning in lawsuits. Meanwhile, Emma's situation continued to unravel. She was eventually let go from her job, and without my financial support, she struggled to make ends meet. As for me, I wasn't done yet. Lucas had taken so much from me, my family, my trust, my peace of mind. And now it was time to take something from him. It was a Saturday morning when the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. I had just sat down with a cup of coffee, feeling a rare sense of calm amidst the chaos, when my phone buzzed. It was Laura. "Robert," she began, her tone sharp and urgent. "You're not going to believe this. I just got a call from a friend at Lucas's old company. Apparently, Lucas didn't just have an affair with Emma. There were others." "What?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "2 other women. Both employees, both under him," she said. "One of them is even suing him for harassment. The company's panicking. They think this could blow up into a full-blown scandal." For a moment, I was stunned. As much as I hated Lucas, even I hadn't expected this. But as the shock wore off, a dark sense of satisfaction settled in. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. "Send me everything you can get your hands on," I said. Laura didn't disappoint. By the end of the day, I had a stack of emails, text messages, and statements from Lucas's former colleagues, all painting a picture of a man who had abused his power for years. It wasn't just about Emma anymore. Lucas was a predator, and he needed to be stopped. The next week was a whirlwind. Michael and I worked together to compile all the evidence into a neat, irrefutable package. Then we sent it to every media outlet, every HR professional network, and every corporate watchdog we could think of. The fallout was swift. Articles began popping up online within days, detailing Lucas's behavior in lurid detail. His name became synonymous with scandal, his face plastered across news sites and social media. But I wasn't done yet. With Michael's help, I arranged a meeting with Lucas. It wasn't hard to bait him. I simply told him I had a way to make the lawsuits disappear. He showed up looking haggard, his once pristine appearance replaced by dark circles under his eyes and a rumpled suit. "Robert," he began, forcing a weak smile, "I'm glad you're willing to talk." I didn't respond. Instead, I slid a folder across the table. Open it. He hesitated, but eventually he complied. As his eyes scanned the documents inside, his face turned pale. You can't be serious, he stammered. Oh, I'm dead serious, I replied. You've lost your job, your reputation, and now you're going to lose everything else. These are financial records from your joint accounts with Laura. She's cleaned you out, Lucas. And once these lawsuits hit, you'll be drowning in debt. You bastard, he spat, his voice trembling with anger. No, Lucas, I said, leaning forward. You did this to yourself. You thought you could destroy my family and walk away unscathed? Think again. He stormed out, but not before I caught the glint of fear in his eyes. As for Emma, her downfall was just as satisfying. The courts ruled against her in the divorce proceedings, citing her infidelity and the DNA results as key factors. She lost custody of the children, who were placed with Lucas, and the alimony she'd hoped to secure was slashed to a bare minimum. But the final blow came when the bank foreclosed on the house. With no income and mounting debts, Emma had no choice but to move in with her parents. She called me once, begging for help, but I hung up without a word. Months later, as I sat in my new apartment, I reflected on everything that had happened. The pain of betrayal hadn't faded, but it had been replaced by something stronger: resolve. Emma and Lucas had tried to ruin me, but I'd come out stronger. I'd reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my future. And as I watched the sunset from my balcony, I knew one thing for certain: they'd never hurt me again. When I look back on the past year, it feels like I lived someone else's life. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak, it all seems so surreal. But the scars are real, and so are the lessons I've learned. Emma's betrayal broke something in me that will never fully heal. It wasn't just the affair. It was the years of deception, the way she smiled at me while stabbing me in the back. It's hard to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the one she turned out to be. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal doesn't have to define you. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it shatters your world. But it also forces you to find strength you didn't know you had. I didn't let Emma and Lucas destroy me. I fought back. I took control of the narrative, the finances, and my future. And while it wasn't easy, I came out stronger on the other side. For anyone out there dealing with a similar situation, here's my advice. Don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Gather evidence. Before you confront, make sure you have proof. It's your best weapon in court and in life. Act decisively. Don't let fear or emotions paralyze you. Take the steps necessary to protect yourself and your future. Don't be afraid to let go. It's painful to lose someone you thought you'd spend your life with, but holding on to a toxic relationship will only hurt you more. Today, I'm rebuilding. I've moved into a new home, reconnected with old friends, and even started dating again. For the first time in a long time, I feel free. The road ahead won't be easy, but I'm ready for it. Life is too short to waste on people who don't value you. So if you're facing betrayal, remember this: you deserve better, and you have the power to take your life back. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, leave a comment below. And if you're going through something similar, know that you're not alone. Until next time, take care of yourself and never settle for less than you deserve.